Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming in. I'm not sure how long I'll stream tonight because, well, I haven't been feeling all that great lately. But, kind of wishing I had finished this section on the last stream I did for the Folktales of American, well, Treasures of American Folklore. Because there was only, well, kind of one piece left on Stackalee that I would have finished the killer section and gone ahead and gone on to freelancers. But I also like to see that I am up to 480 followers, which is kind of cool. I'll get to 500 sooner or later. But guess I'll go ahead and... Oh yeah, I do have the cat camera on for once. I remembered it. Yay! I think I need to fix that because it doesn't fit the window right. I should do that off stream. Let's go ahead and get over to the study so we can work on this book. And I do apologize because this section has a fairly long song. I was trying to figure out the beat and rhythm and thought, well, I've got those penny whistles. I could see if I could play the music. Then realized I do not have the breath control for a penny whistle. So, yeah, I will not be playing the music, but I will try to sing as closely as I can. Again, that's no guarantee of it being good, but it'll be there. Especially since it only gives me about 1/3 pages of actual music. Then they just have the lyrics strung out the next page and a half. And they have the refrain separate from the individual lyrics. So I'd be having to go back and forth. So most of it I'll probably just read as a poem instead of trying to sing it. But I will try to sing what I have music for. So again, I apologize for ear torture. And I apologize ahead of time because these are cowboy stories from the 1800s. I'm not going to dance. I will definitely attempt singing. But, no guarantee on it being good. Especially since it's about a man that thought make a deal with the demon that he wouldn't die so long as he had his hat. And the song is actually about his hat getting stolen. And him finally getting caught. They actually talked about there's a play, a musical, of course, that was one of the premises of. The fact that that is in folklore, that people were making some guy dance because he didn't like how cowboys reacted. I think that one is actually on the last stream. Because it was... Where is it? It's not the Sam Bass song. It was in Quantrell. Where is that? It wasn't Bill the Kid either. No. But some newspaper writer from the East came out and was complaining about how everyone was doing things in the West. So they made a musical about him, in which three cowboys were making him tell stories about them, and every time he would stop, they'd shoot at his feet. Then each of the individual cowboys sang a song about themselves. So it was an interesting read. I said, I think that was probably 2 streams ago. I'm sure I've got it in the collections. Okay, that was back when I was doing cowboy chants. And it was about the pseudo bad men that weren't really bad, but they bragged about being bad. Heck, there's an actual song in it. But it's, I think, maybe 4 streams ago. But I do have it in the collections here on Twitch, and I've got it on my YouTube channel. But a lot of the cowboy songs, they would take known music and just make their own lyrics to it. As I was looking at the one for Stackalee, and it kind of goes along with Clementine, so... Anyway, they made the song after a story, but the story introduces the song, so it'll be interesting. How Old Scratch Tricked Stackalee. You see, Stack was getting into such much devilment that even he worried the devil. And old Satan was getting tired of waiting for Stack's soul, so he figured out a way to trick him. Old Scratch knowed that if Stack was killed fighting another bad man like Jesse James, maybe God wouldn't let his soul go to hell. So this is the way the devil fixed it. He schemed it out to make himself look like Billy Lyons, an innocent family man. So when Stack killed an honest family man, the Lord would be mad at him and let Satan have him. One cold, frosty Friday night, when Stack was having one of his lucky streaks at the big con game at the old Jack of Diamonds place in St. Louis, he was so busy picking up his money that he hung his oxblood Stetson on the back of his chair. That's when old Scratch, keeping an eye peeled, changed itself to look like Billy Lyons. Yep, story time, Matsu. And singing time. Yay. That's when old Scratch, keeping his eye peeled, changed himself to look like Billy Lyons. Then he snatched the magic hat and tore out of the white elephant barrel house where he knowed Billy was. When the devil got to the door, he disappeared. Stack came up, running up, and seen Billy standing by the door, looking as innocent as innocent as he pleased, smoking and watching the can dancers. And there's where Stack shot him through and through. Billy pleaded for his life on account of his wife and babies. But Stack, mad as blue blazes because he lost his magic hat that kept the law from catching him, blazed away and blasted poor Billy down. So the wagon come loaded with pistols and a big Gatling gun and hauled Stack off to jail. But the police didn't kill him like the devil set outwise of the window of the shape of a black cat, hoped that they would. Instead, they slapped Stack into jail where the judge sent him to the Jefferson pen for 75 years. He's already served 34 of them, and got 41 more to serve there yet. The devil is waiting for him to die so he can snatch his soul, just like this song tells you. And that's your warning for the song. It was in the year 1861, St. Louis on Market Street, where Stackalee was born. Everybody's talking about Stackalee. It was on one cold and frosty night when Stackalee and Billy Lyons had one awful fight. Oh, about an old Stetson hat. Stackalee got his gun, boy, he got it fast. He shot poor Billy through and through, the bullet broke a looking glass. Oh, oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Stackalee shot Billy once, his body fell to the floor. He cried out, oh, please, Stack, please don't shoot me no more. Oh, oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Have mercy, Billy groaned. Oh, please spare my life. I've got two little babies and an innocent wife. Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Yeah, as I said, I am not a great singer. Monster Hunter source? Eh, that's good. Congrats on getting first, Matsu. Congrats on getting second, Darth. Now it's just got the lyrics for the song, so I'm just going to read it. It was in the year of 1861, St. Louis on Market Street, where Stackalee was born, and everybody's talking about Stackalee. It was on one cold and frosty night when Stackalee and Billy Lyons had one awful fight, all about an old Stetson hat. Stackalee got his gun, boy, he got it fast. He shot poor Billy through and through, the bullet broke a looking glass. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Stackalee shot Billy once, his body fell to the floor. He cried out, oh, please, Stack, please don't shoot me no more. The White Elephant Barrel House was wrecked that night. Gutters full of beer and whiskey, it was an awful sight. Jewelry and rings of purest solid gold scattered over the dance and gambling hall. The can-can dancers, they rushed for the door when Billy cried, oh, please, Stack, don't shoot me no more. Have mercy, Billy groaned. Oh, please spare my life. I've got two little babies and an innocent wife. Stack says, God bless your children. Damn your wife. You stole my magic Stetson. I'm gonna steal your life. But Billy says, I've always treated you like a man. Tain't nothing in that old Stetson but a greasy band. He shot poor Billy once, he shot him twice, and the third time Billy pleaded, please go tell my wife. Yeah, Stackalee the gambler, everybody knows his name, made his living hollering high-low, Jack and the game. Meantime the sergeant strapped on his big 45, says now we'll bring this bad man, dead or alive. And brass-button policemen, all dressed in blue, came down the sidewalk marching, two by two. Sent for the wagon and hurried it come, loaded with pistols and a big old Gatling gun. At midnight on that stormy night, there came an awful wail. Billy Lyons in a graveyard ghost outside the city jail. Jailer, jailer, says Stack, I can't sleep, for around my bedside poor Billy Lyons still creeps. He comes in the shape of a lion with a blue seal in his hand, for he knows I'll stand and fight if it comes in the shape of man. Stackalee went to sleep that night to the city clock bell, dreaming the devil would come all the way up from hell. For the devil was saying, you better hunt your hole. I've hurried here from hell just to get your soul. Stackalee told him, yes, you're awful right, but I'll give you even one hell of a fight. When they came into scuffle, he heard the devil shout, come and get this bad man before he puts my fire out. Next time I see the devil, he was scrambling up the wall, yelling, come and get this bad man before he mops us up with all. Then here comes Stack's woman running. Daddy, I love you true. See what beer, whiskey, and smoking hop is brought to you. But before I let you lay in here and pearl spawn life, she hurried and got Stackalee out on a $5,000 bond. Stackalee said, ain't but one thing that grieves my mind. When they take away my babe, I leave you behind. But the woman he really loved was a voodoo queen from Creole French market way down in New Orleans. He lay down at home that night, took a good night's rest, arrived in court at 9 o'clock to hear the coroner's inquest. Crowds jammed the sidewalk far as you could see, trying to get a good look at tough Stackalee. Over the cold dead body, Stackalee did bend. Then he turned and faced those 12 jurymen. The judge says, Stackalee, I would spare you your life, but I know you're a bad man. I can see it in your red eyes. The jury heard the witnesses. They said they didn't, and they didn't say no more. They crowded into the jury room, and the messenger closed the door. The jury came to agreement. The clerk, he wrote it down, and everybody was whispering, he's penitentiary bound. When the jury walked out, Stackalee didn't budge. They wrapped the verdict and passed it to the judge. The judge looked over all his glasses and says, Mr. Badman Stackalee, the jury finds you guilty of murder in the first degree. Now the trial has come to an end. How the folks gave cheers. But Stackalee was sent down to Jefferson Pen for 75 years. Now late at night you can hear him in his cell, arguing with the devil to keep him from going to hell. And the other convicts whisper, what you know about that? Gonna burn in hell forever over an old Stetson hat. Everybody's talking about Stan Lee. Yeah, I really need to figure out the music for that. But that actually ends a section of this book on the killers. Because then we get to go into the freelances. Hopefully there won't be nearly as many songs. But again, no guarantees. And some of these names I recognize. So, 4. Freelances. Pioneers or frontiersmen are a class of men particular to our country, and seem to have been designed especially to meet the exigencies on the occasion. John C. Duvall. The music is actually written in this book. I said I don't really do treble clef that well since I've always been a bass player. Da 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah, it's in here. I just don't read treble all that well. I have trouble with it. Where does it come from? I thought it's printed in here. So, from Poe Lazarus in part 6. All this stuff about Stackalee. Is from Direction Volume 4. by Ona L. Spencer. One. One that at least one roller coaster Six Flags is named after. Roy Bean. The thin and shifting line that separated law enforcement from lawbreaking in the West permitted not only a peace officer like Wild Bill to become known as a killer, but also a comic scalawag like Roy Bean to become known as the law west of the Pecos. A Kentuckian by birth, he counted the art of bluff as part of his backwoods heritage. And in his late 50s, after knocking about California, New Mexico, and Texas, playing for small stakes as an adventurer and a jack of all trades, saloon keeper, ranger, bullwhacker, blockade runner, wood merchant, he gave up fortune hunting and sought the limelight. On the lawless wastes of Trans-Pecos country, he followed the construction of a new line of the Southern Pacific Railroad as a camp saloon keeper. First at Vinegaroon and then at Langtree, where in 1883 the tracks were joined and Bean moved there as a squatter on the railroad right-of-way. With some 8,000 workers on their hands, the railroad contractors learned the truth of the saying that west of the Pecos there is no law, and called the Texas Rangers to help counteract crime. On August 2nd, 1882, Roy Bean got himself appointed Justice of Peace, on a hunch that it might be as doubly profitable to preside over both the barroom and the bar of justice. From then until his death in 1903, he held court in the Jersey Lily Saloon, named, like the town, for an English actress, whom Bean never met, but who visited the place after his death. The judge who specialized in finable cases and kept most of the fines was not uncommon in the West, but Roy Bean was the most famous example of the type. In fact, even during his lifetime, his legend reached the proportions that his brother Sam wrote of him. You may have graduated from Yale or Harvard and carry a number of diplomas, but if you have not seen or heard of Judge Roy Bean of Texas, you are groping in darkness, and there yet remains a large space to be filled in your classical head. There was plenty of precedent for Roy Bean in the usual Western law, or sheriff, who was judge, jury, and executioner, all in one, and in frontier vigilantism. In fact, he had had first-hand knowledge of the latter when he narrowly escaped from hanging for killing a rival in a love affair in California. And the many anecdotes of his shady business dealings before he became the law west of the Pecos testified to the native shrewdness and bluster which enabled him to dispose of many cases his own way. At any rate, the red rope burn that he wore about his permanently stiff neck, usually hidden by a bandana, was his only diploma, and his only law book was the Revisited Statutes of Texas for 1876. But he inspired respect for the law with his 2 six-shooters, and such bizarre punishments as the use of an old bear and steak method for sobering up drunks, while the stories of his weird decisions and judgments entertained the newspaper, public, and became classics of the Southwest bench and bar. And his comic role for fining Judge Roy Bean rivals the most famous hanging judge of Fort Smith, Arkansas, Isaac C. Parker. Hear ye, the honorable court is now in session, and if anyone wants a snort before we start up, step up to the bar and name your poison. It is the judgment of this court that you are hereby tried and convicted illegally and unlawfully committing certain grave offenses against the peace and dignity of the state of Texas, particularly in my bailiwick, to wit, drunk and disorderly, and being law west of the Pecos, I fine you $2. Then get the hell out of here and never show yourself in this court again. Not really much about him. 2. Buffalo Bill. Hey, guilty. I'm getting third. The volume's okay, right? Because I'm leaning back in my chair and projecting. So, Buffalo William. Bison William. Okay. Hey, Cubine. Welcome in. 2. Buffalo Bill. In the same year that Roy Bean was appointed Justice of the Peace, another masterpiece of showmanship was being created. This was the Wild West Rocky Mountain and Prairie Exhibition, which opened at Omaha, Nebraska on May 17, 1883, and its star, Buffalo Bill. Of all the types of showmen produced by the histrionic West, none was more characteristic of the professional Westerner, long hair and fringed buckskin. For this role, no one was more perfectly cast than William F. Cody, born on a farm in Scott County, Iowa in 1846, who was endowed by nature and experience to be the epitome of all that was high, wide, and handsome in the Old West. Having lived all his life on the plains in almost every capacity, herder, hunter, pony express rider, stage driver, wagon master in the quartermaster's department, and scout in the army, to quote his press agent, and finding all the Indian wars fought and himself out of a job in 1869 at the age of 26, Buffalo Bill discovered his true mission as a buffalo hunter employed by the Kansas Pacific to supply meat for the construction crews. He had won his own name, killing 4,280 buffalo in 1 year. Always something of a show-off, he now took to performing stunts of horsemanship and marksmanship, and fell in with the promotion schemes of James Gordon Burnett, editor of the New York Herald, who had employed him as a guide on a hunting trip, and Ned Buntline, E.Z.C. Judson, the author. In February 1872, Buffalo Bill came to New York at Bennett's expense for the opening of Fred G. Mader's play, inspired by Buntline, Buffalo Bill, King of the Bordermen, taking a bow before the audience, and in December of the same year, he made his first stage appearance in Chicago in Bluntline's Scouts of the Prairie. Ned Buntline, from whom Buffalo Bill parted after his first theatrical success, was only the first of 4 creators of Buffalo Bill. The second was Major John M. Burke, the world's greatest press agent, who publicized Buffalo Bill's duel with the Yellow Hand in 1876, and was publicity man of his Wild West, which Nat Salisbury, who was the number 3, suggested. The fourth was Prentice Ingram, author of over 200 dime novels about Buffalo Bill. In this way, unlike those popular hearers who grew in folklore curiosity, Buffalo Bill was the subject of the deliberate and infinitely skillful use of publicity. Although Buffalo Bill lived to see himself and the Wild West show outmoded, as he was one of the passing of the Old West, the legend of the West, which was partly his creation as he in turn was its creature, still lives in Western pulp paper magazines and movies in the hearts of Americans. Now this is just the introduction for the section, because it will do a lot more detail about them later. 3. Bigfoot Wallace. Your true Western original was an unassuming fellow, free from sham heroics, who, though 6'2" in his moccasin feet, and head and shoulders above the rest as a fighter and storyteller, was yet guileless and unsuspicious as a child, and whenever in conflict with a shrewd, calculating man of business, was helpless as a stranded whale. This is the stuff of which provincial heroes are made, and such was William A. Bigfoot Wallace, born in Virginia in 1816, and noted as a Texas scout and ranger. Like Buffalo Bill, he lived in the cycle of the West and saw the frontier pass, and although he would not have presumed to say with the former, I stood between savagery and civilization most all my early days, In his later days, he went back east for a visit and was perfectly capable of seeing the humor of the savagery of civilization. The Adventures of Bigfoot Wallace by John C. Duvall, first Texas man of letters, who served with Bigfoot and Jack Hayes' company of Texas Rangers, is a result of a happy collaboration between a provincial hero and a provincial writer. Always free and at home with himself, writes J. Frank Dobie, Bigfoot seems to have opened up to Duvall with the utmost gusto, and Duvall took the bridle off him and slapped his rump with reins and told him to hiss his heels to heaven. Although the two were pretty well mixed, Duvall emerges an artist and Bigfoot emerges robust, as natural as daylight and as red-blooded as a maverick yearling. By virtue of Duvall's narrative, he remains the saltiest, rollickiest, most genial, most individualistic pioneer, Indian fighter, Mexican layer-out, and lone wolf dweller of the open range that Texas ever had. In the last portion of the book, the lone wolf character, Bigfoot, is seen at its best by contrast with the settlements and with his fish-out-of-water experience on the farm, proving that you can take a boy out of the wilderness, but you can't take the wilderness out of it. And that Innocents Abroad is still one of the best devices of satire. So, Bigfoot is an actual legend in Texas. Because there's a real man. Yeah. It just makes you wonder, why there aren't Bigfoot sightings in Texas? Oh. Dang it. Another song. Roy Bean, Law West of the Pecos. 1. Roy Bean. Cowboys, come and hear the story of Roy Bean in all his glory. All the law west of the Pecos read his sign. We must let our ponies take us to a town on Lower Pecos, where the high bridge spans a canyon thin and fine. He was born one day near Toya, where he learned to be a lawyer, a teacher and a barber and the mayor. He was a cook, an old shoe mender, sometimes preacher and bartender, and it cost 2 bits to have him cut your hair. He was right smart of a hustler and a considerable old rustler. Mixing up an eggnog, he was grand. He was clever, he was merry, he could drink a Tom and Jerry, and an occasion at the roundup took a hand. Though the story isn't funny, there was once he had no money, which was for him not very strange or rare. So he went to help Pap Wyland, and he got absent-minded, and he put his arm behind on Pap's steer. No, his nickname was actually Bigfoot. I mean, he was only 6'2". That's not really considered tall anymore, to be honest. As Pap was right smart angry, old Roy Bean went to Langtree, where he opened up an office and a store, where he'd sell you drinks and buttons and another ranch and muttons, though the latter made the other fellow sore. Once there came from Austin City a young dude reported witty, of the bean he sorted and guessed he'd take a rise. And he got unusually frisky as he went up and called for whiskey, saying, "Bean, now hurry up and go turn your eyes." Then down he threw $10, which the same Roy quickly hollers. Then the same Roy folds to 9 and hands back 1. So the stranger gave a holler, and he saw that single dollar, and that began the merriment and fun. The dude slammed the table just as hard as he was able. The price of whiskey was too high, he swore. Said Roy Bean, "For all that fussin' and your most outrageous cussin', you're fined the other dollar by the law. On this plain I own a lease, sir. I'm the justice of the peace, sir. The law west of the Pecos always here. And you've acted very badly." Then the dude went off so sadly, while his little cheek there rolled a single tear. One fine day they found a dead man who had in life been a red man. So it's doubtless he was nothing else than bad. They called me to view the body. First he took a drink of toddy, then he listened to all the things the dead man had. For red man he was Tony, for he had a pretty pony, a dandy bit of saddle and a rope. He'd a fine Navajo rug, and a quart within his jug, and a bronco that was dandy on the lope. So the find it was quite raro, he'd been a true consero, and his pay, they hadn't been so far away. He had a brand new fine white Stetson, and a silver Smith & Wesson, while a purse of $40 jingled yea. So, said Roy Bean, you'll learn a lesson, for you have a Smith & Wesson, and to carry implements of war is very wrong. $40 I will find you, for we couldn't well confine you, as already you've been lying round too long. So you boys have heard the story of Roy Bean in all his glory. He's a man who was a justice and the law. He was handy with his books, and he was ornery with his looks, and just now I ain't a-tellin' any more. No, the striking events related in the song to a successful end, no matter how it be sung. CJF. This is a book about cowboys, and of course, there's going to be a lot of songs. Two, Necktie Justice. Hear ye, hear ye, this honorable court's now in session, and if any galoot wants a snort before we start, let him step up to the bar and name his poison. Oscar, serve the gentleman. Thus did Judge Bean open court to try one Carlos Robles, an opening typical of his original procedure. Carlos Robles, he said solemnly after witnesses and hangers-on had down their liquor, it is in finding of this court that you are charged with the grave offense against the police and dignity of the law west of the Pecos and of the state of Texas, to wit, cattle rustling. Guilty or not guilty? Not being able to speak or comprehend English, Robles merely grunted. The court accepts your plea of guilty. The jury will now deliberate, and if the brings a verdict short of hanging, it'll be declared a contempt. Gentlemen, is your verdict ready? The 12 nondescript citizens cleared their throats in unison. It is, Your Honor, several spoke. Thank you, gentlemen. Stand up, Carlos Robles, and receive your sentence. You got anything to say what judgment should be passed on you in this court? Of course, Carlos had not, due to the fact that he had only the vaguest idea of what was happening. Carlos Robles, Judge Roy continued, his voice almost quaking with the solemnity of the occasion. You have been tried by 12 true and good men, not men of your peers, but as high above you as heaven is of hell, and they've said you're guilty of rustling cattle. Time will pass and seasons will come and go, spring with its waving grass, green grass and heaps of sweet-smelling flowers on every hill and in every dale. Then will come sultry summer with her shimmering heat waves on baked horizons, and fall with her yellow harvest moon, and the wild growing brown and golden under the sinking sun, and finally winter with its biting, whining wind, and all the land will be mantled with snow, but you won't be here to see any of them, Carlos Robles. Not a damn sight, because it's the order of this court that you be took to the nearest tree and hanged by the neck till you're dead, dead, dead. You olive-colored son of a billy goat. Yeah. Not a real saying in court. But it's in the book about it. Thank you for the hydrate. And for the stretch. Billy Goat. Called him, hang you to and neck to your dead, 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 you olive-colored son of a Billy Goat. Billy Goat. Yes, Billy Goat. We have. Now, we're on page 136. So, this is the book of Folklore, so. The law west of the Pecos could be cruel when administering his brand of justice, but he was cruel only when he deemed the accused in the crime fully warranted his cruelty. He more frequently tempered justice with his own peculiar brand of mercy, especially if there was any means by which he could profit by that mercy. One afternoon, several ranchmen brought in a 20-year-old boy accused of horse stealing. They demanded that he be tried and dealt with according to the enormity of the crime. Judge being duly opened court, appointed 6 men as jurors, and the actual number meaning nothing to him and depending entirely upon the men available. This is what happens when someone does a documents of... Oh, God. Well, I suppose sections of this book are all songs. I mean, we're still in the first section of the book where it's still talking about real people. Haven't gotten to the folk stories yet. This is the last section we get to for the Miracle Man, which really gets to the list comic demigods. I half enjoy the singing, just because I know how badly I sound when I'm doing it. It's like karaoke, but 100 years old. Because that's when most of these stories came out. I mean, just the songs that were in the fairy tales are weird enough, but songs in American folklore? Crazy. Judge being duly opened court, he appointed 6 men as jurors, the actual number meaning nothing to him, and depending entirely upon men available. He would not appoint just any citizens to jury duty. They must be good customers of a liquid bar at the other end of the shack during intermissions, or their services as jurors no longer were desirable or acceptable. Every transaction must be made to return with the utmost profits, and non-drinking jurors were strictly dead timber. Man, why are they always coming in twos lately? Two Russian bots. Ah. Hey, this honorable court is again in session. Anyone wishing to snort, have it now. This here prisoner is charged with the grave offense of stealing a horse. And Oscar, where are the witnesses? I don't know, it's just been 2 Russian bots in a row. Both for Zinglead.ru. Yeah, just trying to sell bots. The law of the West, Pecos opened. He appreciated his own sense of humor in varying his court openings to relieve the monotony, but he seldom varied to the extent of omitting the invitation to participate in a sort at the other bar. "We caught him in the act of stealing an animal," the ranchman testified. "He admitted his intentions." "That right, young feller? Was you stealing the crayas?" The young prisoner dropped his head, the unruly red hair tumbling down over his high forehead. "Yes, your honor," he mumbled. "Gentlemen of the jury," his honor instructed, "the accused pleads guilty to horse theft, and you know as well as I do the penalty. I'm ready for your verdict." And it was promptly forthcoming. Gravely the judge passed sentence. "If there's any last word or anything, I'll give you a few minutes," he told the pale Easterner, thus extending an infrequent favor. "I would like to write a note to my mother back in Pennsylvania," the doomed prisoner mumbled with obvious emotion. "Thank you." "Oscar, fetch the prisoner a piece of wrapping paper and a pencil. I think we got a pencil back here behind that row of bottles." Bean gently handed the convicted thief these writing facilities, got up and tendered him to the beer barrel and rickety table from which the sentence had just been passed. Then he took a position directly behind the boy so that he could watch over his shoulder at what he wrote. The victim wrote at length an apology for the grief and trouble he had caused his mother, and earnestly sought her forgiveness. "In a small part, perhaps I can repay you for the money I've cost you keeping me out of trouble. Enclosed is $400 which I've saved. I want you—" "By gobs!" exclaimed. "Gentlemen, I got a feeling there's been a miscarriage of justice in this case. I hereby declare it reopened. Face the bar, young man." After all, that was much cause he said the lad tried to steal. He didn't actually steal him, so I rule it as a finable case. I hereby fine the accused $300 and to get the hell out of the country before I change my mind. The boy gladly enough paid the $300 of his $400, and assured the court that he was next setting sun he would find his brow well beyond the real Pecos. Practically every cattleman and law-abiding citizen of the Bean Bailiwick had an infinite appointment with the deputy constable of the law west of Pecos. Thus any citizen who apprehended any person in the act of committing a crime or suspected that any crime had authority to bring him in forthwith for trial. Being consistently encouraged such cooperation, for the more business they brought before the courts, the greater the financial returns for the whole establishment. Naturally, it was understood that such arresting constables did not in any manner participate in the fee accruing, such as from the cases treated by them. This doubtless was the only justice court in the state of Texas where only one official received all fees collected by the office. Under authority as deputy constable, Reb Wise, a Pecos rancher, brought in a cattle rustler on a hot August afternoon when business at the refreshment counter was exceptionally brisk. It was all both Roy and Oscar could do to handle the trade. Consequently, Bean looked up with a sour expression when the deputy constable Wise approached the bar and informed the judge that the prisoner was awaiting attention at the bar of justice. "What's he charged with, Rob?" Roy asked, after opening another foaming bottle of Triple X beer. "Cattle rustling, your honor," Rob replied. "Whose cattle?" "Mine." "You positive he's guilty, Reb?" "Positive? Say, Judge, I caught him in this morning running an iron of one of my finest calves," the rancher replied with emphasis. For the first time, Roy glanced up at the scowling prisoner. He noticed the blood dripping from his left ear. "Who plugged his ear?" he inquired. "I did, your honor, when he wouldn't stop." "You ought to shot him in his head, Reb. You could have killed him, and then it would have been had. Besides, he wouldn't have been saved for the punishment he deserves. You sure he's guilty?" "Didn't I say, Judge? I caught him with a running brand in my stuff." "All right, then," said the judge. "What'll it be for you, feller?" to the newcomer at the bar. "All right, then. The court finds the accused guilty as charged, and there ain't no worse punishment I know of right now. I hereby sentence him to be hung. Reb, I'm busy as hell here. You and some of your compadres take him out and tie his neck to some handy limb. Some place where his cronies will be positive to see him. And that's my ruling. Court's adjourned, and what'll it be before you sit down, Slim?" And then there's a variant of this. What's the prisoner charged with? Roy Bean asked. Stealing horses? Well, whose horses? Mine. You sure about that? Caught him at it. Who nicked his ear? I did when he didn't stop. Poor shot, Jack. But if you had got him, he would not have been properly finished as becoming a horse thief. It's my ruling that the prisoner is guilty. The rest is your business, Jack. You'd better buy him a drink before you string him up. Court is adjourned. The next prisoner I took before Judge Bean, said the sheriff, was a man that everybody had a long time known as a rustler but that nobody had been able to pin the evidence on. What is the galoot charged with? Asked the judge. Running stolen cattle across the Rio Grande into Painted Cave. Sure this is a man? Caught him in the middle of the ford driving the cattle. Then why did you bring him here for when I'm so busy? In case like that, you always give the galoot what he deserves. Take him away and string him up. Then, turning to a line of men at the bar who'd been listening, Roy Bean asked, Well, boys, what are you going to have? Yeah, this sounds like a completely legitimate Texas judge. But ads are coming up. And there's a Boys in chat. So I'm going to have to take a break here. I will see you back in a few. Hey, I'm unmuted. Okay. Welcome back from the break. Everyone got up. Some stretching. As we... Transcript about Roy Bean? Okay. There's a bit of Roy Bean left, so... 3. Roy Bean, Coroner. The story that everybody knows about Roy Bean, the coroner, comes from another bridge accident which happened a little earlier than this. It was a Sunday afternoon in February of 1892. A number of bridge carpenters from the Pecos project had come up to pass the day at the Jersey Lily, among them a quiet fellow named Pat O'Brien, who didn't care much for the carousing and hell-raising that was going on. Towards evening, he decided to take a walk. There were no shady lanes or pasture paths in those parts, so he started off the railroad tracks, a smile upon his face and a six-shooter in his hip pocket. Why he wanted the weapon is not clear. Maybe he was from the East. Easterners were more careful about the article of dress than the native Texans. When he got to the Mayor's Canyon Bridge, 3 miles east of Langtree, a heavy wind was blowing as usual down the draw, and one gust was strong enough to take him off his feet and land him at the bottom, where the sharp rocks ended his career. Section workers and track walkers were always very careful when they crossed this bridge, but the stranger never suspected this danger until it was too late. That evening he was found and Roy was notified. He and Jim King, now Del Rio, went out to the buckboard and brought the body back and laid it out on the table in the saloon. Nobody knew the man behind his name, so they searched him for identification and, in doing so, found his six-shooter and $40. Now, said Coroner Bean, I've got to bury this poor devil, and it's hard digging in these rocks. Hereby I fine the defendant $40 for carrying concealed weapons. Turning to Jim King, he added, Don't you think that's the way to handle it, Jimmy? Jimmy thought so, and Roy had no idea he had made a historic decision, but one man told another, and pretty soon Texas was chuckling at Roy Bean's way of conducting his business. The San Antonio Express got a hold of the story of Roy's verdict, and in March passed it on to the world. Gentlemen, said Roy to the jury and onlookers, there is nothing to find out that this man came to his death. He fell on the bridge, and that's all there is about it. But there is one thing that is not so plain, and that is, what was he doing with that gun? Of course he's dead and can't explain, and that ain't the fault of the law. It's his own misfortune. Justice is justice, and law is law, and he can't offer no satisfactory explanation of the matter. I shall be obliged to fine him $40 for carrying on his person that pistol. Because a man chooses to put on a pair of wings is no reason why the great state of Texas should not have what's coming to her, all the same. Find a dead man or concealed carry. Well, can't do that in Texas anymore. 4. Judge Roy Bean. Again. A man came to Roy once and says to him, Judge, I've found a good place for a hog ranch down the river here, and I want to go into the business. I think it will be a paying enterprise. As you have more money than I have, you can advance the necessary funds to set the scheme afoot. Very well, says Roy. I'm always willing to do anything that has some money in it. Enough said, the hog ranch was established, and it flourished for about 2 years, but Roy was not receiving any profits from the ranch. Very true, especially in this state. And I finally have a cat. Yay, cat! Roy was not receiving his profits from the ranch. Hitherto it had all been unlimited expedition without results, and Roy proposed to his partner to have a dissolution of partnership. but he objected, and the ranch had to wag along the same old way. Roy wanted to bring suit against him, but there was no other court or authority except his own, and what was he to do? Finally, after a deep study, an idea struck him, and he says, "Now I have it, I will sue him before myself." He issued a citation for his partner, who made his appearance in court. Roy made a speech in his own behalf and testified in the case, while his partner reviewed the proceedings in silent amazement and had but little to say. The decision of the court in the case was briefly that the plaintiff, who is the court itself, will take one half of the hogs and the other half the constable will sell at public auction to pay the damages and suffered by his plaintiff on the side of the cost. And the cost of the suit. Samuel G. Bean, Las Cruces. So, taking his partner to court before himself. Yeah, that sounds about right for takes the lawyers. 5. Roy Bean and the chairman. It is time now to talk about Roy Bean's affair with the chairman. Chinaman. Patrick Wilson. 5. Roy Bean and the Chinaman. It is time now to talk about Roy Bean's affair with the Chinaman. The earliest and shortest version of the story appeared in the El Paso Daily Times for June 2nd, 1884. Here is the latest on Roy Bean. Somebody killed a Chinaman and was brought up standing before the irrepressible Roy, who looked through 2 or 3 dilapidated law books from stem to stern, and finally turned the culprit loose, remarking that he'd be damned if he could find any law against killing a Chinaman. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's just what the newspaper article was. That is the core of what has become, after 50 years, one of the best-known anecdotes ever to come out of the Southwest. Time must have been about the beginning of 1883. The ends of the tracks were joined in January. In the West, hundreds of Chinese laborers were building. From the East came the Irish and other brawny sons of Europe. The white laborers hated the Chinese for their willingness to work for low wages, their saving ways, and their squeakish gibberish, and for their love of peace. More killings than one occurred when the gangs from the East and West got close enough to rub elbows and cut throats, and there were many narrow escapes. For example, take the night of 1882 when the Irish, who had almost built the east side of Pecos, got involved in a celebration and decided that their lives would be wasted unless they crossed over to where the Chinese were camped in the West Bank and cut off a few pigtails. They knew that if a Chinaman did not like to fight, and would not fight under ordinary provocation, but it would give satisfactory performance if his pigtail were cut off. So these drunk and joyful Irishmen organized themselves and were all ready to start out when the foreman interfered and averted the race riot by a very slim margin. Even so, the Chinamen lost their lives by one means or another and were buried where they fell. Later, the bones of many of them were collected and sent back to the West Coast by Chinese friends who came in for that purpose. Usually the Americans concerned themselves very little about whether the Chinamen lived or died, but somehow the historic case under discussion was brought to Roy Bean for judgment, and he turned the Irishman loose, as most Americans in West Texas would have been glad of an excuse to do. On account of the feeling between the Chinese and their other laborers, it would have been easy to start a race riot just then, and Roy knew it. Besides, as he once said, there were about 200 of the toughest white men in the world around the saloon, and they might have lynched him if they hadn't let the Irishman go free. His decision was merely his own peculiar way of preserving law and order, at the same time protecting the health of Judge Bean. But the ruling had a real gamey western tang and stuck in men's minds. The story not merely lived, it grew. By 1899, he was getting into the newspaper exchanges in this way. At Langtry, Texas, says the San Francisco Wave, Squire Roy Bean, who administers justice and keeps the leading saloon, had to sit in judgment on a railroad clerk who had killed Ah Ling, a laundryman, for, as he claimed, insulting him. The man was arrested and brought before the magistrate Bean, who listened to the evidence, which was given by the accused himself, and then proceeded to turn the pages of the revised statutes. This here book, which is a Texas law book, he announced, says that homicide is a killing a human, male or female. There's many kinds of homicide: murder, manslaughter, plain homicide, negligent homicide, justifiable homicide, and praiseworthy homicide. There's three kinds of humans: white men, niggers, and Mexicans. It stands to reason that if a Chinaman was human, killing him would come under the head of praiseworthy homicide. The prisoner is discharged on condition that he pays for having the Chinese buried. Damn. This is why I have the warning in the captions of this stream. Yeah. In print and out of print, the story went around, gathering details and variations. In the last 10 years, it has been reprinted a dozen times, and every fresh book about the old days of the Southwest tells its new way. In 1934, F. H. Bushek put it his own version in his book, Glamorous Days. Yeah. Especially when they're reprinting stuff from the time that it was actually done. Some cavalry soldier in passing through that way, it was thought, had lost his saber. One of the bridge gang found it. When it was brought into camp, nobody wanted the old corn cutter except the Irishman, who took a shine to it because he had once been a soldier himself. He ground up the old blade and kept it in a handy weapon. He being a storekeeper of iron supplies, a responsible sort of job. The Irishman was in the habit of now and then stealing a pie from the cook. The Chink got the missing pies, finally laying the Irishman and caught him red-handed. Armed with a big butcher knife, the Chink attacked the Irishman, who ran and got his old saber and returned to the fray. He made just one pass at the Chink and with the saber and cut off his head, clean off. He made one pass at the Chink with his saber and cut off his head as clean as if the Lord High Executioner of China had done the job. The ranger arrested the Irishman and took him before Judge Bean. Okay, another interesting version of it. At least that one is self-defense. The most remarkable variation of all occurred in 1931 in Tom Reining's book, Gun Notches. Tom was an old cavalryman and peace officer who knew Roy, and this is the way he tells it. Once Roy's son shot and killed a Chinaman because he charged too much for his laundry, or something serious like that. And of course, young Bean was tried before his old man. Naturally, Roy wanted to give his boy as easy a deal as the law would allow, but he was a square shooter, and if his son turned out guilty of a misdemeanor or anything like that, there was a cinch he'd wrap it up to him like he was just a stranger. So the judge opened court with the usual formalities, throwing out a couple of drinks who wouldn't quit snorting during the proceedings, and started the justice mill grinding. On account of his own kin being up for trial, and all the customers watching him were more interested than usual, he went about things mighty careful and legal-like. As a rule, he gave his decisions right out of the deep knowledge of the law, where he'd been at JP for a year or more. But this time he had figured he had to dig into the unabridged statutes of 1846 or somewheres around that date. He hooked his spectacles onto his handsome big red nose and began reading the law book out loud so everybody could see he wasn't keeping any ace in the hole. And damned if he didn't read those Texas statutes from cover to cover, cussing every cowpuncher awake that went to sleep on him, and refusing to let any of them go to the bar for a drink during that long spell of court. When he'd waded plumb through the Texas law from murder to cow brands in about 2 hours or so, those cowpunchers and rustlers had got a darn sight more legal knowledge screwed into their skulls than lots of the tin-horn lawyers of the state ever knew. In fact, there was a plumb nuisance after that, some of them spouting the information about Texas law by the hour every time they got drunked up and could get some unfortunate dogey to stand hitched long enough to pour it into him by the gallon. And there she is, gentlemen, says Roy Bean, when he'd got through. That's the full, unexpurged law of the great state of Texas up to 1873, and it ain't no ways likely to been any fundamental charges run into since. The complete statutes of here state and the Alamo on the head, and there ain't a damn line in it nowheres where it makes it illegal to kill a Chinaman. The defendant's discharged. Oh, man. You can ask anybody over 40 in West Texas, and any man under 40 if he knows anything about Roy Bean, and you will get another edition of the same tale. It is already part of American folklore. The man who shot the Chinaman and started all storytelling may still be alive. Uncle Bill Jones, who has kept the bar at a reserve, New Mexico, since 1886, says he is, and Uncle Bill was at Langtree when the trial happened. Bill doesn't think you should talk too much about the man, however. I'm not permitted to tell his name, he says. Last time I heard of him, he was tending bar. He is a pleasant sort of person, very agreeable. Well, people do change. Boy, that kind of does set a legal precedent. But there's no law specifically against it. Is it illegal? But they also didn't consider Chinamen as human. Man, things change in this century. It's in the 1880s. All I can say is, those who are not embarrassed by history have never studied history. I'm going to have to use that somewhere. Anyway. 6. Being spare. It would be too bad if old Bruno couldn't have a chapter, considering how much Roy thought of him and how bad he felt when Bruno was, well, as we might say, murdered. As far back as anyone can remember, Bruno was there, fat, fractious, and full grown. Other bears came and went, but it looked as if Bruno might go on indefinitely. Roy had a cage for him, but never thought of asking him to stay in it. Most of the day he was attached to a corner post of the porch or by a chain long enough to allow for a little circulation. The rest of the time he was fastened to a post midway between the tracks and the saloon. He and Roy got along fine. They had similar views on a good many of life's problems. They're both rugged souls who put up with no nonsense, and at the same time they liked to get friendly and relax with the right people. They were both inquisitive and anxious to pick up anything that came their way. They're specialized in poets. Both were also apt to be a bit of a shock to people who are unprepared for beans. Or bears. One day a tramp got off a freight train at Langtree and made a beeline for the well-known charity of the Jersey Lily. Roy was ruminating on his porch and heard the hobo's plea. Go on round behind the saloon, he said. Knock on the door. They'll give you something. Joyfully, the man skipped around the corner. 6 seconds later, he came tearing back in a mad scramble, eyes popping, face pale, and coat missing. What the hell's going on here? Demanded Roy, startled out of his missive calm. There's a bear around there, gibbered the frightened tramp. A glance around the corner revealed the bear on his hind legs holding the tramp's coat and wondering what to do next. The man had run smack into him, and Bruno was suffering from shock. Naturally, being law west of the Pecos, Roy assumed the right of putting everybody else to work, and that went for Bruno. One of the bear's jobs was to assist the judge in carrying out the mandates of the law. It was 1892 when that Mexican woman came to Roy for help, although Mexicans regarded him with awe, when her husband went on a high-speed, non-stop spree. Roy was sitting on the gallery with his son, Sam, his constable, Phil Forrest, and his friend, M.W. Tracy, who tells his tale. The woman recited her sorrows with drama and pathos, and Roy was much moved. Phil, he says, will you find this woman's man down near Pedro's shack dead drunk? Bring him in here and look out for his knives. Sam, get that chain and lock him in the bad room. It was a little while Phil returned with a husband who was about as drunk and disorderly as a man could be. He could hardly hiccup an answer to the questions which were put to him. Finally, Roy had him taken out and hitched by a chain to the post in front of the saloon. Then the bear was led over and padlocked to the same post, his chain being a little shorter than the one attached to the man. Still too drunk to care about anything, the Mexican watched indifferently as the bear ambled by, drew a paw back, and slapped him into a somersault. Surprise and terror dawned on the man's face as he rolled into the end of his chain and get up out of the bear's reach. In the next half hour, he sweated a week's supply of alcohol out of himself, playing hide-and-seek with old Bruno, who was having a happy time. When he was completely sobered up and ready to be brought before the seat of justice, Judge Bean handed down a decision. The woman was to have the family burial and household effects. The man was to have 15 minutes to get out of town. Roy told Tracy that the bear and stake method was frequently used for sobering up drunks. That was one of Bruno's minor jobs, however. His real purpose in life was to help Roy Bean sell booze. Somehow or other, he learned to like beer and became a conscientious drinker as his master. All he asked was that somebody should loosen up the cork for him. He knew how to do everything else. He would catch a bottle that was thrown to him and get the cork out with his teeth and sit contentedly down and tip her up. But of course, people were always willing to buy a bottle of beer just to see the bear pour it down, and sometimes along about train time, Roy would provide his pet with a free bottle so that passengers on the train could see, visit, and absorb. Once the bear is supposed to have got drunk, broken loose, and run the judge off into the brush. But that story is too good to be true. Bruno sometimes took offense at evasions at his personal liberty, but it was careless strangers who suffered for their rash acts. He did put a brakeman on top of a boxcar once, but it didn't do any harm. The brotherly relationship between Roy and his bear was really a beautiful thing, but like all beautiful things, it had to end. Without realizing what he was doing, Roy committed an act which made bare bones and bare skin out of Bruno. The seed was sown when a whiskey salesman for Hugo Schmelzer dropped in for a routine call. Some say his name was Sam Betters, or some say his name was something else, but Sam Betters will do. Like all the other liquor salesmen, he expected to be soaked when he visited the Jersey Lily, so he had brought drinks for the crowd, including Bruno, and saw half a dozen empties counted shyly with the bottles he really had bought, prepared to pay more than he really owed. Deep down in his pocket he fished for change and brought up nothing but a $20 bill, a new, crisp, and noisy. It made Roy's eyes bulge and mouth water, but he merely put it into his cash drawer and got a faraway look in his eyes, and seemed to forget the world around him. The whiskey salesman finally said, "Judge, I don't get any change of that bill." "The only change you've got coming around here is a change of heart," said the judge, "and by God, you need it." About the time the train whistled and the drummer went out and run, pausing only to shake his fist at the bear who was still consuming the free bottle of suds. A week later, he got his chance for revenge. Dave McCormick, who still lives in San Antonio, happened on Roy Bean in the barroom of a Mergier hotel. They coasted over to the bar and bent an elbow. About that time, the whiskey salesman came in and joined the party. They all bent elbows together. "Where you been?" inquired Roy. "El Paso," said the drummer. "Did you stop in my town?" "Sure did." "Everything all right there?" "Fine." They bent elbows again. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," said the salesman. "Bruno's dead." "The hell you say?" Roy was deeply shocked. "You remember that you told me that I could have a hide, and is your word as good as that?" "Ah, God, you never heard Roy Bean not making his word good, did you?" "Well, will you sign a telegram to Sam and tell him to ship the hide to me?" "Yes, by God," boomed Roy. So a telegram was written out to the bar, Menger Hotel, to this effect: Sam Bean, Langtree, Texas. Skin Bruno and ship his hide to Sam Betters in San Antonio. Roy Bean. When the telegram arrived, Sam was much puzzled. He knew no reason for sacrificing one of the family in this way, but he was the obedient son. Put 2 charges of buckshot between the bear's ribs and did as he was told. Next day, Roy came home, and the first thing he said was, "What did Bruno die of?" "Of buckshot," replied Sam. "Naturally." "You mean you killed him?" asked Roy, stunned. "Sure." "Why in the hell did you do that?" "Couldn't skin him alive, could I?" That was the only time Roy's friends ever saw him mad enough to kill anybody. Fortunately, he didn't see the whiskey drummer again till he had cooled off, so there was no bloodshed. In 1896, when the big fight was run off at Langtree, the bear was only memory. The mangy mountain lion occupied the historic stage and snarled at the fans who went and looked at him. Bears came and went around the Jersey Lily after that. None of them could get a grip on Roy's affections. There were a couple of cubs with no personality or gumption. There was one full-grown specimen who looked riot, but soon showed signs of a nasty disposition. He clawed his chain, frightened children, and once broke the neck of a burro with a single blow of his paw. Everybody wondered what would happen if he ever got loose, and he very kindly satisfied this curiosity one day by breaking his chain and taking after his owner. The judge ducked, dodged, and yelled at Mr. Trent and seized his gun and solved the problem with gunshot. After that, Roy gave up trying to fill the vacant cage. Bruno had no successor. I've got a section of stories about other people that tried to follow these judging habits. 7. Variants of Roy Bean's sentence. Judge Parker's sentence. In early trail days, when Oklahoma was known as Indian Territory, a certain federal judge, one Parker, was known for the severity of his decisions. In a cow camp brawl of the passing trail herd, a Mexican cook shot and killed a cowboy with a dispute over a game of cards. Friends of the dead cowboy wanted to lynch the cook at once, but one of their number, the trail herd boss, persuaded them to wait until he had seen Judge Parker about the matter. It is related that he and the judge had several drinks together the next day in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and that the judge readily agreed to pass sentence of death upon the Mexican, according to the ideas of the trail herder. Plenty of oratory was asked for along with the sentence in order to make the proceedings entirely legal and proper. This is Judge Parker's sentence. Jose Manuel Miguel Xavier Gonzalez. In a few months it will be spring. Snow of winter will flee away. Lies will vanish and the air will become soft and balmy. In short, Jose Manuel Miguel Xavier Gonzalez, the annual miracle of the year's awakening will come to pass. But you won't be there. The rivulet will run its purling course to the sea, the timid desert flowers will put forth their tender shoots, the glorious valleys of the imperial domain will blossom as the rose. Still, you won't be here. From every treetop some wildwood songer will carol his mating song. Butterflies will sport in the sunshine, the busy bee will hum happily as it pursues its accustomed vocation, and gentle breezes will tease the tassels of the wild grasses and all nature. Jose Manuel Miguel Xavier Gonzalez will be glad, but you won't be here to enjoy it. For I command the sheriff or some other officer or officers of this country to lead you out to some remote spot, swing you up by the neck to a nodding bough of some sturdy oak, and there let you hang until you are dead, dead, dead. And then Jose Manuel Miguel Xavier Gonzalez command further that such officers retire quietly from your swinging, dangling corpse, that the vultures may descend from the heavens upon your filthy body and pick the putrid flesh therefore, till nothing remain but the bare, bleached bones of a cold-blooded, copper-colored, bloodthirsty, show-eating, guilty, sheep-herding Mexican son of a bitch. Wow. I mean, the judges have eloquence, but still. What does chili eating got to do with it? Not chili. Judge Benedict's sentence. The most distinguished of the jurists who made Santa Fe the headquarters was Kirby Benedict. He was appointed Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of New Mexico by Franklin Pierce in 1853. He was a native of the state of Connecticut, born in 1811. I don't know. Though cow herders and sheep herders do not get along. All of his adult life, up to the time of his appointment to the New Mexico judgeship, was spent in Illinois, where he was a distinguished member of the bar and a close friend of Stephen A. Douglas and Abraham Lincoln. He was a man of much more than ordinary ability. Literary pursuits had a charm for him, and his characteristic was a lasting memorial to some of his judicial opinions, which assume the form of essays, and are to be found in Volume 1 of the Reports of the Supreme Court of New Mexico. It was in Taos that he delivered the famous sentence of death, with which he probably survived all the more elaborate utterances and writings. It is so characteristic that it should be preserved, and repeated as a member of the bar present at the time it was given. Jose Maria Martin had been convicted of murder in the District Court of Taos, the crime having been shown to be of very aggravated nature and without provocation. The judge evidently concurred in the verdict as fully as if he had been a member of the jury. When the time for sentence was arrived, the prisoner was brought before Judge Benedict, who addressed him as follows. Jose Maria Martin, stand up. Jose Maria Martin, you have been indicted, tried, and convicted by a jury of your countrymen of this crime of murder, and the court is now about to pass upon you the dread sentence of the law. As a usual thing, Jose Maria Martin, it is a painful duty for the judge of courts of justice to pronounce upon a human being the sentence of death. There is something horrible about it, and the state of the court naturally revolts at the performance of such a duty. Happily, however, your case is relieved of all such unpleasant features, and the court takes positive pleasure in sentencing you to death. You are a young man, Jose Maria Martin, apparently of good physical condition and robust health. Ordinarily, you might have looked forward to many years of life, and the court has no doubt you have, and have expected to die at a green old age. But you are about to be cut off in consequence of your own acts. Jose Maria Martin, it is now the springtime. In a little while the grass will be springing up green in these beautiful valleys, and on these broad mesas and mountainsides flowers will be blooming, birds will be singing their sweet carols, and nature will be putting on her most gorgeous and her most attractive robes, and life will be pleasant and men will want to stay. but none of this for you. Jose Maria Martin, the flowers will not bloom for you. Jose Maria Martin, the birds will not carol for you. Jose Maria Martin, when these things come to gladden the senses of men, you will be occupying a space about 6 feet by 2 beneath the sod, and the green grass and those beautiful flowers will be growing above your lowly head. The sentence of this court is that you will be taken from this place to the county jail, that you will be kept there safely, securely confined, in the custody of the sheriff, until the day appointed for your execution. Be very careful, Mr. Sheriff, that we have no opportunity to escape, and that you have kept him in the appointed place at the appointed time. That you be so kept, Jose Maria Martin, until Mr. Clerk, on what day is the month? This Friday, about 2 weeks at this time come. March 22nd, John. Until Friday, this 22nd of March, when you will be taken by the sheriff from your place of confinement to some safe and convenient spot within the county that is in your direction, Mr. Sheriff, as you are confined to the limits of this county, and that you will be hanged by the neck until you are dead. And the court was about to add, Jose Maria Martin, may God have mercy on your soul. But the court will not assume the responsibility of asking always Providence to do that which a jury of your peers has refused to do. The Lord couldn't have mercy on your soul. However, if you affect any religious belief, and are you connected to any ritual organization, it might be well for you to send for your priest or your minister, and get from him, well, such consolation as you can find. But the court advises you to place no reliance upon anything of that kind. Mr. Sheriff, remove the prisoner. Wow. He was a very wordy judge. And that finishes everything about Roy Bean. Not sure how much of Wild Bill will be able to get through. That's only a few pages. Yeah. Buffalo Bill is Wild West. Buffalo Bill is Wild West, Prairie Exhibition, and the Rocky Mountain Show. Dramatic equestrian exposition of Life on the Plains, with accompanying monologue and incidental music, the whole invented and arranged by W.F. Cody. W.F. Cody and N. Salisbury, proprietors and managers, who hereby claim as their special property the various effects introduced in the public performances of Buffalo Bill's Wild West. Monologue. Ladies and gentlemen, I desire to call your attention to an important fact. From time to time, it will be my pleasure to announce to you the different features of the program as they may occur. In order that I may do so intelligently, I respectfully request your silence and attention while I am speaking. Our agents will pass among you with a biographical history of the life of Honorable William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill, and the other celebrities who will appear before you this afternoon. The management desires to vouch for the truth and accuracy of all the statements contained in this book and respectfully submitted to your attention as helping you understand and appreciate our entertainment. Before the entertainment begins, however, I wish to impress upon your minds that you are about to witness is not a performance in any common sense of the term, but an exhibition of skill on the part of men who have acquired the quality while gaining a livelihood. Many unthinking people suppose that the different features of our exhibition are a result of what is technically called rehearsals. Such, however, is not the fact, and anyone who will witness our performance the second time will observe that the men and animals alike are the creatures of circumstances, dependent upon their success upon their own skill, daring, and sagacity. In the East, the few who excel are known to all. Far West, the names we offered to you this afternoon are synonyms of skill, courage, and individual excellence. The conclusion of the next overture of our performance will commence with the grand processional parade of the Wild West. Overture, grand procession, parade, and cowboys, Mexicans, and Indians with incidental music. I will introduce the different groups and individual celebrities as they pass before you in review. Enter a group of Pawnee Indians, music. Enter Chief, music. Enter a group of Mexican vaqueros, music. Enter a group of Wichita Indians, More music. Enter Chief. Music. Enter Group of American Cowboys. Music. Enter King of Cowboys. Music. Enter Cowboy Sheriff of the Platte. Music. Enter a group of Sioux Indians. Music. Enter Chief. Music. I next have the honor of introducing to your attention a man whose record as a servant of the government, whose skill and daring as a frontiersman, whose place in history as the chief of scouts of the United States Army, under such generals as Sherman, Sheridan, Hancock, Terry, Miles, Hazen, Royal, Merritt, Crook, Carr, and others, and whose name is one of the adventures of the lamented Custer, and whose adherence throughout the eventful life of his chosen principle of true to friend and foe. We have made him well popular and known throughout the world, and you know whom I allude, the Honorable William F. Cody, Buffalo Bill. Enter Cody, the bugle calls. Cody speaks. There's stage direction in this, so. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the equestrian portion of the Wild West exhibition. Turns to review. Wild West, are you ready? Oh! And sometimes. First on our program, mile race between a cowboy, a Mexican, and Indians, starting at. You will please notice that these horses carry the heaviest trapping, and neither of the riders weigh less than 145 pounds. Next on our program, the Pony Express. The Pony Express was established long before the Union Pacific Railroad was built across the continent, or even before the telegraph poles were set. And when Abraham Lincoln was elected the President of the United States, it was important that the election returns from California should be brought across the mountains as quickly as possible. Mr. William Russell, the great government freighter, who was the time when the Washington first proposed the Pony Express, he was told that it would take too long, 17 or 18 days. The result was a wager of $200,000 that at that time could take it in less than 10 days, and it was, the actual time being 9 days, 17 hours, leaving 7 hours to spare. The winner of the wager of $200,000, Mr. Billy Johnson, will illustrate the mode of riding the Pony Express, mounting, dismounting, and changing the mail to fresh horses. Enter. Express rider changing horses in front of the grandstand and exit. Next on our program, 100-yard race between an Indian on foot and an Indian on an Indian pony. Starting at a given point, running 50 yards and returning to the starting point. Virtually a race of 100 yards. Then they ran the race with music. Next on your program, a historical representation between Buffalo Bill and Yellow Hand, fought during the Sitting Bull War on the 17th of July, 1876 at Warbonnet Creek, Dakota, shortly after the massacre of Custer. This fight was witnessed by General Carr's command in the Sioux Army and resulted in the death of Yellow Hand and the first scalp taken in revenge of Custer's fate. And the duel was described above. Cody supported by cowboys, etc., and Yellow Hand by Indians. Miscellaneous. I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Seth Clover. Mr. Clover will give an exhibition of his skills, shooting with a Winchester repeating rifle at composition balls thrown from the hand. Clover shoots as above. Shooting 2 balls thrown in the air at the same time, you will notice that Mrs. Clovis is obliged to replace a discharge cartridge before he can shoot the second ball. Shots as above. Obscuring the sight by placing a card over the rifle. Shot as above. If any gentleman has $50, he would have mutilated and come home as a pocket piece. If he will throw it upon the track where we can get it, Mr. Clover will try and oblige him. Shoots coin. Shooting at a nickel. Shoots. Shooting at a marble. You'll notice that the mark is hardly larger than the bullet shot at. Shoots as above. Shooting a number of composition balls thrown in rapid succession. Shoots as above. Exit. I have the pleasure of introducing Master Johnny Baker of North Platte, Nebraska, known as the Cowboy Kid. Master Johnny is 16 years of age and the holder of a boys' champion lodge rifle and revolver shoot, and stands ready to meet any opponent his age. Master Baker will give an exhibition of his skills, holding his rifle in various positions. Holding the rifle sideways, holding the rifle off his left shoulder, holding the rifle upside down on top of his head, standing with his back to the target, bending forward and shooting between his knees, leaning backward over support and shooting over his head. standing with his back to the target and taking aim with the aid of a small mirror. Shooting composition balls thrown in the air, and shoots each shot as above. And now we get to the really important one. Miss Annie Oakley, the celebrated wing and rifle shots. Miss Oakley will give an exhibition of her skills shooting with a shotgun at liquid clay pigeons, holding the gun in various positions. Pigeon shoots up strong from trap. Shooting double from 2 traps sprung at the same time. Shooting is above. Picking the gun from the ground after a trap is sprung. Shooting double in the same manner. Shooting 3 composition balls thrown in the air in rapid succession. The first with the rifle held upside down above her head, the second and third with a shotgun. Those would have to be pretty good shots. It's interesting that her shooting got attributed to Johnny Baker, the kid doing the shooting over her shoulder with a mirror. Somewhere I have a copy of Annie Oakley's diary. Oh. Next on our program, the Cowboys' Fun. We're riding a bucking ponies and mules. There is an impression of the minds of many people that these horses are taught or trained to buck, or that they are compelled to do so by having foreign substances placed under their saddles. This, however, is not the fact. Bucking, the same as balking or running away, is a natural trait of the animal, formed by habit. Riders announce in succession. Watch Mr. Taylor pick up his hat. Taylor rides past at full speed, leans out of his saddle, and picks a hat off the ground. Watch Mr. Taylor pick up his handkerchief. Taylor rides past at full speed, leans out of his saddle, and picks up the handkerchief. Honorable William F. Cody, champion and all-around shot of the world. Thank you, Mr. Cody. Mr. Cody will give an exhibition of his skills, shooting with shotgun, with rifle, and revolver with clay pigeons and composition balls. Shooting first with a shotgun with clay pigeons and pulling the traps himself. Shoots. Shooting clay pigeons in the American style of holding a gun, with the butt of the gun against his elbow. Oh. How's it American style? Shooting clay pigeons in the American style of holding the gun, the butt of the gun below his elbow. Shoots. Shooting clay pigeons in the English style of holding guns, with the butt of the gun against the armpit. Please notice the change in position. Shooting clay pigeon standing with his back to the trap, turning and breaking the pigeon while it's still in the air. Shooting with his back to the trap, gun over his shoulder, and turning and pulling the traps himself. Holding the gun in one hand. Holding the gun in one hand, pulling the trap with the other. Shooting clay pigeons double from 2 traps sprung at the same time. Shooting clay pigeons double, pulling the traps himself. Shooting 20 clay pigeons inside of 1 minute and 30 seconds. Any gentleman desiring to hold the time of this feat, please take it, not from the pulling of the trap, but from the first crack of the gun. Mr. Cody will shoot next with a Winchester repeating rifle at composition balls thrown from the hand while he rides his horse. Missing the first shot and hitting with the seconds. Missing twice and hitting the third time. Hitting 3 balls thrown at the air at the same time. Hitting a ball thrown from behind. Hitting a ball thrown from either side. Hitting a number of balls thrown in the air in rapid succession. Hitting a ball thrown in the air while he rides past it at full speed, a shot accomplished by no other marksman. Mr. Cody will next attempt the great double shot, hitting 2 balls thrown in the air at the same time. Mr. Cody will next attempt the great double shot. Oh, okay. It's a different song. Mr. Cody will attempt the great double shot, hitting 2 balls thrown in there at the same time as he rides past at full speed. Hitting composition balls thrown in the air while marksmen and object throwers ride side by side at full speed, thus performing a picture of combined horsemanship and marksmanship, never before presented to a public audience. hitting composition balls thrown in the air with an ordinary Colt's Army revolver. Next on our program, the Deadwood Stagecoach, formerly the property of Gilmore, Salisbury & Co., and plying between Deadwood and Cheyenne. This coach is an immortal place in American history, having been baptized many times by fire and blood. The gentleman holding the reins is Mr. John Higby, an old stage driver, formerly the companion of Hank Monk, of whom you may have already read. Seated beside him is Mr. John Hancock, known in the West as the Wizard Hunter of Platte Valley. Bronco Bill will act out as a rider, a position he has occupied many a times with his credits. Upon the roof of the coach is seated Mr. Coroner, cowboy sheriff of the Platte, to whose intrepid administration of that office of several consecutive terms, covering the period of 6 years in Lincoln County and its vicinity, and depicted, Lincoln County, Nebraska, and its vicinity are indebted for the peace and quiet that now reigns. Mr. Coroner's efforts having driven out the cattle thief and hoodlum elements who formerly infested this section of the county, notably the notorious Middleton gang. The coach will start upon his journey, be attacked by an ambush by a band of fierce and warlike Indians, who in their turn will be repulsed by a party of scouts and cowboys under the command of Buffalo Bill. Will 2 or 3 ladies and gentlemen volunteer to ride as passengers? All 3 of the passengers are seated in the coach. It is customary to deliver parting instructions to the driver before he starts on his perilous journey, something in the following fashion. Mr. Higby, I have trusted you with valuable lives and property. Should you meet with Indians or other dangers en route, put on the whip. If possible, save the lives of your passengers. If you're all ready, go! The coach is driven down the track, meets Indians, turns, followed by Indians. Battle back to stand. Cody and the cowboys come to the rescue. Battle past stand. Cody, coach, and the cowboys return to stand. Exits. Next on our program, 1/4 mile race between Sioux boys and the barebacked Indian ponies from the Honorable William F. Cody's ranch at North Platte, Nebraska, starting at... And the race starts, and the music. I would next call your attention to an exciting race between Mexican thoroughbreds. These animals are bred with great care and at considerable expense, their original cost being $1,600 per dozen. All up, no jockeying, go! The race is above. The music plays. We won't come home till morning. Portion of the Pawnee and Wichita tribes will illustrate their native sports and pastimes, given first by the war dance. And they do it in war dance. Next, the grass dance. Do a grass dance. Next, the scalp dance, in which the women of the tribe are allowed to participate. Scalp dance by Indians and squaws. Keep your eyes on your burros. The burros return. Music. Home again, or we never speak as much, etc. I have a picture introducing Mustang Jack, or as the Indians call him, Petikawachicha, the great high jumper. Jack is a champion jumper among the cowboys of the West and stands ready to jump with anybody in any manner or style for the amount of money. He will give you an exhibition of his skill, jumping over several various animals, beginning with a small burro. Jack jumps over the burro. Jumping 24 feet in 2 jumps, clearing the burro as the second jump. Jack jumps as above. Jumping the Indian pony, Shashana na Pugoel, a feat which gave him his name, Mustang Jack. Jack jumps as above. Next, jumping the tall white horse, Doc Powell, 16.5 hands high. The best record standing high jump is one of 5 feet and 3 inches made by Mr. Johnson of England. In order to clear this horse, Jack is obliged to make a jump of nearly 6 feet, thus beating the record daily. Jack jumps. Next on our program, the roping, tying, and riding of wild Texas steers by cowboys and Mexicans. Performance is above. Next on your program is Riding the Wild Elk by Master Voda Hall, a Fiji Indian from Africa. Fiji Indian from Africa. Well, they ride a saddled elk. Okay. Next on our program, the attack upon the settlers' cabin by a band of marauding Indians and their repulse by the party of scouts and cowboys under the command of Buffalo Bill. After our entertainment, you are invited to visit the Wild West camp. We thank you for your polite attention and bid you all a good afternoon. And the battle goes as above. For the grandstand, adieu and dismissal by Mr. Cody. Wow, okay. That is pretty much what this Wild Bill show will be. Anyway, it's 2 hours and my announcer voice is getting a little worn out. But luckily, that's the end of what they have on Wild Bill Hiccup. No, not Wild Bill. It's Buffalo Bill. Yeah. Find someone to raid. If anyone has suggestions, by all means, throw them out here. Oh. But in the Wild Bill announcer was kind of fun. Buffalo Bill. I always get Buffalo Bill and Wild Bill confused. Never wonder why. No. Buffalo Bill was Bill Cody. Wild Bill is Hickok or Hitchcock, depending on which version of his name you find. I see the Heart Griffin on. So we will read the Heart Griffin. Ooh. Buffalo Bill to Dracula. Sound fun? There's the forward message. Welcome, Salty. Hope you have a good night. And I will try to get Princess Carrie to snore. That's adorable. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Hopefully I will see you tomorrow for more fairy tales. Or fairy tale. It'll be the third book of my own fairy book by Andrew Lang. Nope. Have a good night, everyone.